Hello, welcome, Cabbage here. So I thought I would do a report of the most recent time that I went to the local game store for Magic the Gathering, where I played some Standard, and then I can talk about like what deck I used and the people I played against. But I can also, in the latter half, maybe talk about my Commander deck that I am thinking about using the most, making my main, and then talking about like one match that I had that night after Standard, and then kind of gauging like the power level of this community, this meta in this area. All right, but first, Standard. I didn't know what to make, but I like red a lot, and red is easy to understand, easy to play, simple, straightforward. So I'll show you my deck. I did the classic red deck wins formula, where you got 20 creatures, 20 non-creatures, and then 20 lands, and that worked out pretty well. But here, whoops, I used Phoenix Chick, 3 copies of this. If I don't have something else, I'll put this out turn 1 and attack with it. It's good with the flying. It also has the ability to come back from the graveyard, but I never ended up using that. And then got 4 copies of the Monastery Swiftspear. That's pretty cool, right? Foil, full alternate art in Japanese. This is another great turn 1 play. Has haste as well. And then as I cast spells, it has prowess. You can get more powerful. Pretty strong there too. And then here's Squee. He's still standard, legal. Really like this guy. Just 2 copies of him because he's more expensive than the others. Costs 3. Him too, he can come back from the graveyard. I don't think I ever did that in that tournament either. And then we get into the mice, which are super fun from the latest Bloomburrow set. Here's the uncommon, also a 1-drop for 1/1. But whenever you target it, it gets a +1/+1 counter. That's good only once per turn. And then when it dies, it will do damage according to its power to the controller. And yeah, that's pretty powerful. There are some kind of combos you can do with that. And then I got 4 copies of this guy. That's a rare mouse. 2-drop for 1/2. And then every beginning of the combat step, you can target a mouse, and then you can give it either double strike or trample. And then that has great synergy with the previous mouse, because I can target that mouse with this one, and then get the +1/+1 counter on them and buff them up, turn after turn. So that was very helpful. He has the Offspring ability, so I can get 2 copies of this in play, but I never used it because I didn't have the mana. But yeah, this guy was great. Happy to have 4 copies of him. And then one last rare mouse. This one I could only scrounge up 3 copies of. It's hard to get, and if I can find it, it's like, I don't know, over $10, so I didn't want to get it, but 3 was enough. But costs 2, 2/2, haste. Also has prowess, so I can buff it up with spells cast. And then if I target it with something like the previous, like gives double strike or something, I can reveal the top card of my library, exile it, and then play it until the end of turn. And that's like kind of, sort of hand draw, but very good for red. This is actually my least favorite of the 3 mice, but still helpful to have. And then just to have like more mouse targets in the deck is great. Okay, and then we get into the non-creature. We got Shock, 4 of these. I was happy to use these old border ones. I also have an 8th edition foil. That's pretty cool, right? And then, of course, 4 copies of Lightning Strike, very similar to Shock. More damage, but more mana cost. I played against one guy that had a Shield Red, and so I did the combo, 1 Shock, 1 Lightning Strike for the 5 damage to get rid of them. Here is Monstrous Rage. Maybe the best card in the deck, and then expensive too, because people want it. I was only able to... Well, I only let myself buy 2. I didn't want to buy 4. But it's an instant, and then you put on the Beast roll or something from the... what do you call it? The Fairy Tale set that came out recently. And then you also get +2 power, so it's a +3 power for the turn. And then you get the +1/+1 until the rest of the game, if it hangs on there. And I think it has flash? Oh yeah, it's an instant, I keep thinking it's an enchantment with flash, but no, it's an instant. And then part of the reason why I didn't buy the 4 copies of that was because I had a couple copies of this, another enchantment. Or this is an actual enchantment. Costs 2, gives you +1/+1. And trample. When the bearer dies, you draw a card, that's great. And then you can plan it, or plot it for 1. Spend it or cast it on a later turn. So if you're short on mana, which I might be with only 20 mountains, then this comes in handy. Oh, and then these previous 2 cards, they also target people, my guys. So the mice, they can get buffs through that. Alright, and then 3 copies of this, that also came out in Bloomburrow. Gives you trample, I think. And then if you control a mouse, you get a +1/+0. And then you can draw a card. So yeah, lots of nice stuff here. Again, with the targeting, you can get the buffs or the exiling, pseudo draw. And then a couple card, this artifact here, from March of the Machines maybe. But if you equip it, then you get +2 power. And that's it. But it has flash, so you can cast it at any time, only costs 1. Another combat trick, sort of. It does have a re-equip cost of 3. I did use that a couple times because it would fall off of guys that were killed, but this was useful too. I was only able to get 1 copy of this just because I forgot to buy it. But I only want to use the red part there. 1 mana, I sacrifice a guy, or no, I do damage of 1 guy, the power, straight to the face of the opponent, and then I sacrifice it. So this has weird synergy with the first mouse that I showed. You do the damage according to the power, and then you sacrifice it, and then when that mouse dies, then you do more damage, double the damage, to the face of the opponent. So yeah, nice synergy there. And then finally, 2 copies of Twinferno. 2 mana instant. I can either copy a spell that I cast, so maybe 2 lightning strikes, or I can give somebody double strikes. That's good for combat. So yeah, this is good for both combat or just, direct damage doing spells. Like that one a lot. And then 20 lands. Not much to show here. 18 basics and then 2 of this guy, also from Bloomburrow. Tap for colorless, or you can tap it for red, but only for creatures. Or you can spend 1 red and then tap it to give some animal +1/+0 and haste. I used that a couple times, yeah. Oh, here's a full art Bloomburrow mountain, very cool. I'm considering putting in a Blasting Zone into this deck. There was one match where somebody used a couple of enchantments, white enchantments, to sort of trap my guys. So if I had Blasting Zone, then I could get rid of that enchantment and then get my mice, my guys back. But the matches that I played, 3 matches with the standard pool. First one was against black and white bats. That was a cool deck to go against, actually. Their main bat was from Ixalan, I think. Had lifelink and some stuff. But yeah, Ixalan and then Bloomburrow together had lots of bats. That was a cool deck to watch in action. I went 1-2 against that guy, so he didn't sweep me, but yeah, he did beat me. And then the second match was against a mono green deck. I think they used some raccoons and stuff from Bloomburrow, but their finisher was the Phyrexian Nissa Planeswalker. It could ultimate immediately, which was crazy. So yeah, they got me there a couple times. But that one too, I went 1-2, so I did take a game from them. And then the last match was against green-black. I think that was also raccoons, maybe. But there I was able to get 2-1, so I actually beat a guy in best of 3, so that was cool. But yeah, everybody was very friendly. They all kind of sort of used English for my benefit, which was not necessary, but I appreciated it. Maybe... Well, I guess here I can talk about sort of like the social aspect. Like before the games, or like in between matches, between the people playing each other, we were talking, just casually. But during the game, like between two people playing each other, there was like no like chit chat or anything not to do with the game. I remember in one match, somebody played a Fabled Passage, that new artwork from the Bloomburrow set, and like when I said, I like this new artwork maybe more than the previous one, it was like I snapped a guy out of a spell, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, we're not talking about the game, we're just talking about like the artwork." So he was very locked in on the game. But then one topic that we talked about a lot was the upcoming Duskmorn set, which references a lot of like American horror movies from like the 80s and 90s, and we were talking about that. Some people knew a lot about like the horror tropes of that time. Some people didn't, so it was fun to talk about those, talk about the origins of like Friday the 13th, look at how many movies were in the series, the video games. I explained to them what the name of the Famicom system was in America, the NES. But yeah, Standard was very cool. That was my first time playing Standard in paper, in person, and I think I want to do it again. Probably going to stick to Red just because I like it, and it's also just cheaper to put together, because you only got to do one color. It's powerful cards that are not expensive typically. Commons and uncommons can be really strong, so yeah. And I really like the mice. It feels funny to have mice fighting, zombies or dragons or whatever, so yeah, that was fun. And then for joining, they had like a long box, of just random promos that they had collected over the years, and I pulled randomly from that, and I got this guy, showed him in a community post, but a white-blue rabbit wizard, Quain, and you can tap him. Each player draws a card, may draw a card, and then gains 1 life, so maybe kind of like a group hug guy. Might be interesting as a commander, but I'm not going to build him right away. But yeah, very cool. Fun pull. And then, after the standard event, there was some just kind of random commander players sort of milling about, so we put a game together there. I told everybody I only had 45 minutes to play, and we managed to finish the game right at the 45-minute mark, so yeah. Previous video, I did talk about like kind of the average length of the Commander games, and yeah, it was about 45 minutes to an hour. And then part of the reason for that is because somebody would reach like a critical point with their strategy and then just end the game there. Same thing here. But I used my current pet deck, which is Riga and the Strixhaven Stadium. But yeah, just use a lot of little evasive guys to hit people and then try to get 10 points on that. Alternate win con. It's not very strong, it's not very fast, but I'm just obsessed with it, with trying to make it work, so I brought it again there. But I held back for that game. I had, counter spells and sweepers and stuff in my hand, but I really didn't use any of it because I didn't want to extend the game beyond the time that I needed to go. So yeah, I held back for that. But later, when I have more time, then I want to go harder. And then I can talk about maybe kind of the construction of my deck, because I'm still kind of wondering what direction to take it. Maybe later I'll make a video like, showing each card and talking about what they all do. But I showed this also in a community post, but I bought some, or I have some kind of high price staples, and then the reason why I have these, the reason why I put them in the deck is to enable this kind of slower, crappier strategy that I have. But here is Mystic Remora. This will like draw me maybe potentially lots of cards, every turn, even if it's not my turn. And so having more cards gives me more options, more resources to play. I like the old border there, that's from Ice Age. And then here, this is Gemstone Caverns. I pulled this from the box of Time Spiral, if you remember when I did that. But this is a very high-powered card. It doesn't work very often, but when it does, very high-powered. expensive too, so I'm glad I don't have to buy that separately. This one I did buy separately, Lotus Petal. That's also a little bit of fast mana, one-time use. And then I also bought this guy for more card draw. I don't love to play these kinds of cards because you have to ask every time, you know, if they want to pay the tax, and if they don't, then you get to draw a card. But it's just so good that I'll put up with it. And then, like free counter spells, I can play this without paying the mana cost, so that's very convenient. So I can spend all my mana to put out my guys or whatever, and then still have a possibility to counter something. But yeah, I kind of showcase these 5 cards in particular because they're very powerful. And then if I were to put them in my deck, that would raise the power level of my Riga Stadium deck. And I'm wondering like what power level I want that deck to be at. And I'm even considering making 2 decks. Making 2 Riga Stadium decks. One high power, like level 8 out of 10. And then making one low power, maybe 6 or 7. And so in the lower power, I would not include any of the cards that I just showed off there. But I gotta do more testing. I gotta play more. I gotta see like what the power level is of people around me. I need to see like how powerful that Riga deck needs to be to have a chance to win. So yeah, I do need to play more. But if it gets to a point where it can't win, you know, even with those nice cards that I included, then I'm considering adding a stax angle to the deck. And what stax is it just kind of like slows down everybody else so that I can do more stuff, maybe in the same amount of time. People don't like to play against stacks because it limits them, but if that's what it takes to get my crappy strategy to work, then I'll do it. And so yeah, I am collecting cards for like stacks, and so if I do make the stronger version, maybe I'll put these in there. But for example, I have this Tocatli guy. Creatures entering the battlefield don't set off abilities or something. I think that's what that is. Yeah. And also has 1 power, which will work with Riga's skills. So that's cool. And then here, Linvala, one of the few cards I have in English. But activated abilities of creatures your opponents can't control can't be activated, so yeah. This doesn't hit me, which is very nice, but this is going to be a big target for sure. But also, I chose stax cards that would not affect my plan. Like, I have very little creatures that have enter the battlefield effect. So that's not going to interfere, that Tocatli person. Here we have Narset. This is an alternate artwork version. That looks pretty cool. I like this more than the standard. But this limits people to drawing only 2 cards per turn, I think it is. I think the kind of the mean way to play this is to play it with like Windfall. So everyone discards their hand and they're supposed to draw 7, but if you have this out, everybody only draws 2 and I get 7. I'm not going to do that with my deck, but yeah, this is another stax piece. Here's one that I had previously. This is a Gatekeeper Thrall, I think, but this is kind of similar to what was before. Artifacts and creatures entering the battlefield do not set off abilities. Also has 1 power, so it can work with Riga, and has flight and flash. Really like this card. And then here is Aven Mind Sensor, which I got a few of these from the Time Spiral box that I opened. But when people search their library, they can only look at the top 4 cards instead of searching their whole library. So this really limits like fetch lands or tutors or that kind of thing. So it's very cool. I like the artwork too by Rebecca Guay. And then here, also pulled this from a Time Spiral box, but the old border foil. It's very cool. I don't know if you could call this a stax piece. It might be more of a counterspell. But like a non-token creature, if it is entering the battlefield and was not cast, I can, if this is on the battlefield or if I play it with flash, I can exile that creature instead. So in the right situation, very powerful. Yeah, this was cool to have this already on hand. And then here's a Grand Abolisher. Players can't play spells on my turn, so that's great. No counter spells, stuff like that. But yeah, there are a few creatures among these stack pieces that have like more than 1 power, so they're not going to work with Riga's ability. But hopefully I have enough 1 power guys to make that work. And then here is Lavinia. What does she do again? Oh, if somebody casts a spell, creature spell, people cannot cast creature spells that cost more than the number of lands that they have. So if somebody cheats out a creature, you know, they'll not be able to do that. If they're casting the spell using like artifact mana, which is more than their land total, can't use that. And then, right, whenever an opponent casts a spell without using mana, then it is countered by this character. So very powerful, and doesn't hit me, so that's pretty strong. And then finally, I have Thalia. That's a cool version, alternate artwork there. But this will raise the cost of all non-creature spells by 1. This will affect me, but a third of my deck is creatures, so this will probably affect me less than a lot of the other cards, yeah. But yeah, those are my thoughts on what I'm going to do with my commander deck, and then also my experience with Standard for the first time. Oh, I forgot to talk about like what the other people used in that commander game. The guy to my left used Jetmir, so he had a strategy to use or get out a lot of token creatures to get that ultimate, basically, on that commander. Just left him in the command zone the entire game. The guy across from me, diagonal from me, he used Nekusar. That was kind of low-key the most frightening commander. And then the guy on my right, he used... there was that Bloomburrow commander set, that red, white, and blue bird commander. It came with a sub-commander, Arthur, which was a mouse. He was using that. And then that's like looking at the top few cards of your library and then putting one out into play. Kind of a Wynoda strategy, maybe it was. Wynoda or somebody like that. But he ended up winning because first he hit me with the white dragon from the D&D set, and then rolled a 19, and then made 19 flying 1/1 fairies. And then he looped some creature onto the board and got infinite turns from that. I don't know how that works, but he would get it back in his hand. He would put a card back on top of his library, that kind of extra turns creature, and then would attack. And then he had the 19 fairies, so you could go boom, boom, boom. With his unlimited turns, in 3 turns he attacked everybody in turn for 19 damage. The game was at a point where he could kill all of us with that 19 damage, so that's how he won. Very impressive finish. But yeah, looking at the power level, yeah, I'm gonna have to at least include, you know, the stuff like the free counter spells and the draw engines. I don't know if I'm gonna have to go so far as to include the stax pieces. But if in the far future I ever join a competition that's going to be more cutthroat, then maybe I will put in the stax pieces at that point. And then maybe the funniest thing about the night was the guy across from me playing the Nekusar deck. All of his cards were bent, but they weren't like, you know, creased, but they were all just like kind of curving up in one corner. What he was doing was that he was playing all his cards the same way. He would hold it like here. He would have his thumb on the corner, and then he would jam the card into the table with his thumb. And so everything was like going up like that with the corner. I thought that was hilarious. He was playing like the One Ring, you know, like jamming it into the board. I was like, oh my god. But yeah, they were all in sleeves, so maybe they're still fine. I don't know if this is true or not anymore, but I remember back in the day, like there were problems with like counterfeit magic cards. One way to know if a card was real was you could tear it in half, and if there's a center layer of black, then you know it's real, but nobody's going to do that. Another thing you can do is you can take the card and you can like fold it like this. And then you can actually touch the ends, two ends together, and then it will not crease and it will return to the way it was. I don't know if that's true anymore, but that's what I've heard. But yeah, knowing that the cards could take that, maybe it's okay that that one Nekusar player was bending all of his cards. I thought that was hilarious. Okay, so that was my experience with Magic the Gathering. That's my second in a series. Next week, I'm going to go play the pre-release for Duskmourn, because I like to get all of the pre-release packs because of the codes for Arena. But this time I'll actually be able to play the actual packs that I get in a social setting. I'll let you know how that went as well. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again. Take care.